anytime I would come up to a move that I felt like I wouldn't be able to do because of my back, she would say, okay, well, let's find a different way to approach it. And that outlook changed my perspective about how I look at my situation. That just because I can't do something one way, that maybe if I just look at it differently, I can do it another way. You're listening to the Aerial Hour.
Rest stop number 5.
The Aerial Hour is a show that dives deeper into what it takes to build a sustainable business in the aerial industry. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Aerial Hour. I'm your host, Tara, and today I am joining you from Hohenwald, Tennessee, which is actually funny because today is a rest stop, and our last rest stop was also from Hohenwald, Tennessee. So with every rest stop, of course, I bring on Phil. So I have him here with me today. And we're going to tell you about where we're at, what we're doing, and some other things. So how's it going, Phil?
Hey, it's good. It's funny that we've made a circle around the U.S. and we're back to the same place.
Yeah, we have. It's crazy. We've been to like 22 states, wearing our masks, taking all the precautions, staying in our house for the most part.
You check our map on the website.
Yeah, you can check the map on the website. So before I get to today's episode, of course, I've got to share with you a couple of things. So first up is today's episode sponsor is me. I'm today's episode sponsor. So I don't typically talk about myself a whole lot on this show, and it's super uncomfortable for me to do so. So I thought it would make me a little bit more comfortable if I said that, like, I was sponsoring the episode. But fun fact, I sponsor every episode because I make the show happen.
Yes.
Well, we make the show happen and you all make the show happen. But I don't know. I just had to say that so that I feel comfortable talking about myself for however long this episode goes. So today's episode is sponsored by me. I hope you enjoy. Next up is the review of the week. The review of the week does not have a name. It actually said review complete. So if you shared this review, please reach out to me so I can give you all the love. The review of the week says, informative and entertaining, very easy to listen to during work or at home. The interviews offer a ton of insight into the aerial community. We'll definitely subscribe and I can't wait for more episodes. Thank you so much for sharing your review. You don't understand how much this helps us, helps other people find us by kind of kicking us up in the algorithm, as well as truly makes our day. So thank you. Please keep sharing them. You can write your reviews on Apple as well as Facebook and any other podcast platforms that allow you to write reviews, because some of them do and some of them don't.
And finally, we came back to Hohenwald for a reason. What is that?
Well, it's because I'm teaching at the Chrome Bar, which is an actual dream come true, and I'll be there until the end of this month. So if you're in the greater Nashville area, check out the schedule. It's linked in my bio, and you can see all the classes that I'll be teaching because there's actually like a decent amount. And I got to teach my first class there last night, and it was absolutely incredible. Like,
Yeah.
I just forgot how much I missed being in a studio 100%, like all the way around. It wasn't just like being in a studio and getting to dance. It wasn't just teaching. It wasn't just, being around other individuals. It was the whole experience. It's very needed. So I'm very, very excited to be here for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'd say it's much different than dancing around outside the camper.
Yeah, it's very different. Or inside the camper and
really.
knocking plants over constantly. And so now we'll get to today's episode. So as I mentioned before, this is a rest stop, and typically Phil and I come on here and tell you about what we're doing and where we're at and what we've been working on. But today's episode is going to be slightly different. I'm going to let Phil kind of lead this interview because, like I said before, I'm going to be talking about myself, and that's really difficult for me to do. So I figured having him interview me might take some of the anxiety off, because honestly, like, if I'm being 100% honest right now, like, what we're about to talk about is difficult for me for a number of different reasons. And it's not something that I'm necessarily ashamed of, but it's something that I've struggled with, and it's just not incredibly easy for me to talk about. So I have a lot of apprehension about sharing it just because, you know, my hope is that the show is a business platform as well as sharing incredibly inspiring stories, but I'm always going to want you to walk away with more information about how you can run your business. So that's my hope by the end of this episode is that we get to there. But I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Oh, well, thank
trusting you with my show.
really.
So be careful, buddy.
Now it's my show.
Oh, it'd be like the motorcycle hour.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's much easier to answer the questions than ask the questions.
Is it? Oh, I think reverse. I think it's much easier to ask the questions.
I would rather answer a question all day.
Well, get to it.
But, well, okay. What's one surprising thing that most people don't know about you?
One thing that most people don't know about me is that I have 8 vertebrae fused together.
Oh, my.
Oh, my is right.
When did that happen?
I was 17 years old and I had a severe curvature in my spine, which means I had scoliosis. And pretty much everybody has scoliosis, but mine had kind of gotten out of control and my spine was all wonky. So
yeah. Well, it was like a big degree or something.
yeah,
right?
it was like when it started, when they originally found out, it was like, you know, less than 30 degrees. And by the time they had caught it again, it had jumped to like 60 something degrees, which most people wouldn't be able to tell just by looking at me. I just kind of I would stand crooked. You see me try to do it now, but for the most part, no one knew that there was an issue. I wasn't in any physical pain. Every once in a while I'd have like weird pains, but it wasn't something that I like struggled with. So when it had gotten to a point where they couldn't reverse it through wearing a brace or whatever, they decided to operate, and unfortunately there were some complications that required me having the surgery redone 2 weeks later.
Oh man, that sucks.
Yeah, it was the most painful, hardest thing I've ever been through.
Yeah. So like you're 17 and then your spine over a period of a year, it curves like 30 degrees.
Yeah. Additional degrees. Yeah.
So it's not like straight is 0.
Yeah. It was like the letter S kind of.
Well, I guess that's
that's
one way to say it.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of it was definitely wonky. And so they were able to reduce the curvature from like 60 something degrees down to like 28 in the middle. So for all of my medical friends out there, I have vertebrae T7 through L2 fused together. So that's my thoracic through my lumbar spine. It doesn't like keep me from really doing much, which I'll talk more about later. I can't like bend my back. When I bend over, when people ask me about it and they're like, how does that affect you? And I'll kind of like bend over to show them that my back just doesn't like flex. It's just flat, you know, because of pole, there's so much opportunity, which we'll talk more.
So you had the surgery and then 14 days later there were complications and you had to have it again. That's gotta be painful.
Yeah, it was really rough. And then after the second surgery, I had to be on medication for about 12 weeks that required pretty much round the clock attention. So luckily my mom had already taken care of my father at home, so I was able to leave the hospital and finish my care up at home.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. I was
out of that hospital.
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely nice to be back at home and recovering there. But I was in an insane amount of pain, and it wasn't something that they were ever able to get control of.
Wow. So what did you do to try to like curb the pain?
Well, of course, they put me on a ton of medication, but I mean, I also tried every type of therapy from physical therapy to sound therapy to massage therapy, just trying anything to kind of help with the pain. I definitely struggled after the second surgery, just kind of feeling defeated. I felt like at the time, like I went in with a really positive attitude and came out of the surgery on the other side, and it just didn't go the way it was supposed to. And after being in so much pain, I was just like, I I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
It's too hard, and I hate to say that because it sounds so defeated, and I was really defeated. I had also lost my father a couple of years before that, and life just felt hard.
Yeah, it didn't have it good for you.
No, I was definitely on the struggle bus.
So then I'm assuming we like fast forward a few years.
Yeah. So for about 6 years after that, I kind of just struggled. And that's when I found pole dancing.
And how did you find that?
It's funny. I found pole dancing through Groupon. A couple of women, which I've told this story before, a couple of women from the doctor's office I was working at were going to pole dancing classes that they had found on Groupon. And again, like I had tried everything, and I never like when they asked me to go, I didn't say yes because I was like, "Oh, fitness, I'll get exercise and I'll get stretching and it's going to make my back feel better." It was like, "No, I need to bond with these women. Yeah. Pole dancing sounds fun."
Make some friends.
Yeah, like pole dancing had always sounded fun, but I never, I guess, found an opportunity to do it.
I remember when you came home and you said, "We're going to go to a pole class." I was like, "What? That's not like something you would do."
Yeah. At that point, I think I still had like blonde hair at that time and was like, very, very, very thin. And, I think for like 6 years after the surgery, I just really struggled. And around 22, I definitely found a new sense of life and was like willing to do the work to start my road to recovery. But I still kind of struggled after that. There were like 3 years after that I was still in, an immense amount of chronic pain, but at least I was living. Like I was doing better than I was before. So I found pole dance. These women were going to this class. So I was like, I need to bond with these women. So I was like, I'll go to this pole dancing class. And I went to my first pole dancing class and was immediately transported from the moment I walked into the studio, which was Platinum Twirl in St. Petersburg, Florida, which is unfortunately no longer open, but was owned by the incredible Kiv Winters, which I'll link to her Instagram page so you can check her out. But there was so much that happened in that hour that it totally took my mind off my pain. And that was the first time in like 9 years that I hadn't thought about my pain for 1 hour.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So of course, me being me, I was like, oh my God, I want to feel that all the time. Like I remember like,
I'll come back tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. There's like, stretches that you do in like basic pole classes. And there's one where you stand next to the pole and you wrap your inside arm around the pole and you bring your outside arm above your head and then you let your hips fall away from the pole. And that felt so good. And there was like never a time that I could like find a stretch to really get into those places where I felt a lot of tension. And this was the first time that opened it up.
So that kind of took your spine and made it like bend in the way it was supposed to, or
it took it and like stretched it probably the way it maybe wasn't supposed to, but it just enabled me, it gave me something to pull or push against to be able to stretch. So I remember I would grab onto like the side of tables or stuff to kind of help me twist my body because I don't have a lot of twist. I don't have a lot of rotation in my torso. So pole did the same, but I could even pull a little bit more, push a little bit more, and it would stay still, and it would be all different heights that I needed it to
Yeah.
be. But in addition to that, it was also really fun and challenging too, and sexy, and like all of these different things. So I really, really fell in love with pole dancing
Altogether, yeah.
all together, and including the studio and the studio owner, and really was like, I'm gonna jump into this woman's pocket, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna spend as much time as I can here. And my grandmother was just like incredible, and she would like call up and buy me classes every once in a while
Nice.
so I could still go to classes. And
So my favorite story was, we're talking about fun, is you coming home after this class and you're like, spin. I love spinning. I get dizzy and I just love it.
yeah, I don't know if I said it like that, but yes.
But yeah, it was like, I want to spin some more.
Yeah, I just wanted to spin.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to learn on spin poles, and I was not afraid of the spin whatsoever, and embraced it 100%
No, I
all the
remember
way.
when we got a pole for the first time and I tried to spin. I didn't like it.
No, most people, it's funny. I have a couple of friends that like tried it. Specifically, I'm thinking of Haley, and she like jumped up there and she was like, "No way." No.
Yeah.
It's not for everyone, but anyways, I just couldn't get enough of it.
And then you started teaching there, right?
Yeah. So, like I said, I kind of jumped into the owner's back pocket, and
I'm not leaving.
I'm not leaving. You can't get rid of me. And one day after class, we were talking, and she was talking about covering a bunch of classes, that she had some instructors that were going off to graduate school, so they weren't going to be able to teach anymore. And I was like, Kiv, I could teach. And she was like, really? And we sat down and talked about it. And she was like, okay, we're going to do this. And you're going to come in and you're going to shadow classes. And we're going to go over everything that you should do in a beginner's class. And I'm going to show you different moves and how to work with different people. And that's something I didn't mention. Another thing that I really, really loved about specifically Kiv and the way that she taught was that I had put so many limitations on myself, on what I could do and what I couldn't do, and what I'd be capable of doing. But Kiv never did that. Anytime I would come up to a move that I felt like I wouldn't be able to do because of my back, she would say, okay, well, let's find a different way to approach it. And that outlook changed my perspective about how I look at my situation. That just because I can't do something one way, that maybe if I just look at it differently, I can do it another way.
That's a good way to see things, like in general in life as a whole. But yeah, I can see how that could be challenging. I also remember seeing, like, from the beginning, we were talking about how your appearance was kind of like thin, and your confidence in yourself grew with going to the studio.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's something about doing something you never thought you were going to be able to do that changes your belief in yourself. Once I started seeing, like, I think Aisha, that was like a big move for me. I never thought I'd be able to do Aisha. And when I did it, and it like happened on a consistent basis, it made me believe that I could do so much more. Like, if I thought I couldn't do this and I did it with hard work and determination, consistent work, then what else am I capable of?
So much.
And that belief, I think, is what has catapulted the rest of my entire life.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's kind of my question. If I can do this, what else can I do? So I started teaching there after a while of shadowing classes and learning from Kib, and then her shadowing my classes. And that's when I knew for sure, like without a shadow of a doubt, that this was where I belonged. Getting
Right.
to see people just like me, I didn't think I was going to be able to do this. Now I'm doing it, and seeing that for other people and being a part of that journey, there's nothing more soul fulfilling to me than that.
Yeah, you can't put a price tag or anything on that.
What is that? Yeah, it's priceless.
No, it's the feeling you get when you help somebody
Yeah.
and you get that in return, like kind of giving back what's been given to you.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's just the feeling you get. But
Yeah.
I wanted to go back and see like what was the time frame from that first class
Yeah.
to when you started teaching.
I think it was about a year, or maybe like just less than a year. And I was a teacher, an instructor there for 2 years until unfortunately the studio closed. And that wasn't because, there was a lack of wanting to make it work. It was more of, we don't know how to make this work anymore. Groupon, of course, is not a profitable way to run a studio. And I remember sitting down and having the conversation with Kiv, and us just kind of being like, well, I don't know what else to do, and I don't know what else to do, and not really having the time or energy to put into figuring out what to do next. And it was heartbreaking, I think, for all of us.
That's like soul crushing. It's like there's no like answer.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure it happened just the way it was supposed to. And Kiv still teaches classes, and she's still a badass woman, and I still continued on, and the other instructor, Angel, she also continued on. So like everything happened just like it was supposed to. But I remember like just wondering like, well, what do other people do? How do other people make this work? Like, how do we figure out? And just not, the information was there. I don't know if I just wasn't doing the right digging or again, it happened the way it was supposed to. But this idea of information not being available kind of stuck with me.
Yeah.
So we got married around this time. The studio had just closed, and I just kind of went back to being a student, which was really nice, actually.
Yeah, it's nice not having to like
Yeah.
think about your choreo and your class and
exactly. So I was able to start going back to classes, which was fantastic. I was living in St. Petersburg, so there was a plethora of studios in Tampa. I got to go to Brandyland and Buttercup and had an absolute blast. Also around this time, I left my comfortable job.
Yeah.
I was a care coordinator for a multi-practice office, pediatric office in St. Petersburg. And while I really actually liked what I did, it wasn't the right situation for me any longer.
Yeah.
So I left and I did gig work and worked for my mom, which I am incredibly grateful for just a very short time so that I could figure out what I was going to do next.
So what did you do then?
So I did gig work. I literally would do whatever it took to not have to go back to that job. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do at that point. I just knew that I wanted to do something different. I was hoping for a remote job. I enjoyed being able to kind of make my own schedule. Yeah. I wanted something that I could take some of my administration skills and things that I enjoyed doing and apply them to whatever position it was going to be. But I really didn't know what that was. Then this job kind of fell into my lap. And
What's that?
Yeah, I found this agency in St. Pete. It was a very small agency for virtual assistants, and I didn't really have a ton of experience, but the company was willing to take me on and teach me how they wanted to do things. And I went in, and I wasn't making as much money, but luckily through gig work, I was able to make what I needed there and really learn how to grow my skills as a virtual assistant. And I literally took any work that this agency would give me. So I did everything from email marketing, research, graphic design, website management, podcast management, where I learned these skills. Well, not these specific skills, but the back end skills of podcasts, copywriting, like everything that was given to me. I was like, okay, I'll Google how to do this. I'll take a course on how to learn how to build websites. Like, I will literally do whatever I need to do to not go back to a 9 to 5.
Yeah. So just going over that, you quit your full-time job, started doing gig work just to make things happen. And then you found like a virtual assistant job where you took the time to learn what you were doing.
Yeah.
So bringing that back around to taking your first pole class and how when you were learning your pole and finding new ways to do things,
Yeah.
applying those skills to your business life is,
Yeah.
how it comes around.
Exactly. I mean, I'm not going to cry that you've made that connection or anything, but yeah, exactly. I mean, the courage to do these things came from pole and other things,
But just that outlook where, like, you can't do this one way, we can look at it a different way and you can still accomplish it.
Yep, exactly. And that's what I did. I mean, it was, it wasn't somebody kind of holding my hand or anything and teaching me how to do things. It was like, okay, dive in and figure this thing out. So I worked for about a year or two as a virtual assistant and with this agency, and around that time is when we decided that we were gonna hit the road.
It was good that you had that job because then we could take like road trips because
Right.
I had my job, which was a good full-time job, and
Right.
then I would have vacation time. We would go for vacations up to like the mountains and
Yep.
stuff.
And it didn't matter for me. I could just go and
Yeah.
work from wherever as long as I had an internet connection.
Right.
And so there was one particular trip when we were in North Carolina and you were driving on this road that I find ridiculous, but you motorcycle people and car people find very cool. It's called the Dragon's Tail.
Yes.
It's a very windy road. You were in the driver's seat and happy as can be. And I was working on my computer and sitting there just typing away, looking at you, so happy. And I thought to myself, we should be doing this all the time.
Yeah, why can't we?
Why can't we do this all the time? And I don't think I said anything at that point. I think I waited a little bit longer to see if this was like actually a real thing. But then I brought it up to you, and this is like a whole other episode that we'll save for another day. But yeah, it was like the perfect time to do the perfect thing for us. And so we decided that we were gonna hit the road.
Yeah.
And you had a really, really good job that you enjoyed doing.
Yeah.
Your company loves you. In fact, like, we even got a video message from them this Christmas.
Yeah.
Like, you haven't even worked for them for over a year. And they, and how we did that is, again, it was just like sitting down and looking at everything that we needed to make it happen. And then being super intentional about the steps to take to make it happen. It's all like reverse engineering. But again, we'll save that for another episode.
Yeah, the hard work and determination, we would, like you said, reverse engineer it. So we knew what we wanted. So we went backwards and we knew what we needed to do. And
yeah. And part of that was creating projects that we could do on the road. I knew that I wanted to stay connected to the community and also wanted to do something that would make an impact on the industry in the positive way. I had all these skills. At this point, I'm been a virtual assistant for a couple of years now. I'm producing podcasts for clients and successful ones. And I have all these skills and I'm like, what problems can I solve in this industry? And that's when I thought of the studio closing and thinking about, well, where is this information? Is this information available?
Yeah.
And we had found a super helpful podcast resource that was for RVers, RV entrepreneurs. And I was like, well, we need that.
Yeah.
The pole industry needs a business podcast. Why don't we have that? So I started looking and I was like, there's nothing like this. This needs to happen. And this was like, I don't know, 2018.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So I'm like, this isn't out there. I found like a couple of coaching programs, but those all cost money. And I was like, this is the idea. This is the idea.
So by listening to that RV Entrepreneur podcast, it gave us this idea that we wanted to give back to the industry and give them what they need.
Exactly. Yeah, especially this industry has given me so much. This felt like, I knew that I could put together a quality show. We had this opportunity where we'd be traveling around the country, so I would be able to go and talk to people. This was all pre-COVID also, but able to go and talk to people in person in the spaces that they created about how they run their business. And from there, the idea kind of just like took off. I kind of talked to a couple of people, friends, and then a couple of people in the industry, and they were like very supportive of the idea. At the time, I had also just started teaching at Brandyland and went into teaching with her knowing that I was going to be hitting the road, but also telling her about this idea. And she was so, so supportive of not only my journey as an instructor, but also in creating the show.
Yeah, and we're fortunate enough in Florida to have so many people.
So many aerialists, so many polars. And so I was able to just kind of go around Florida and interview like literally anyone who would talk to me about pole.
Up a bunch of episodes before even releasing.
Exactly, which is a great podcast tip. If you're going to start a podcast, I highly recommend that you bank at least, anywhere between 3 to 5 episodes so that when you release your first, that you can release a couple so people can binge a couple episodes like they would Netflix.
Get them hooked.
Yeah, get them hooked. Exactly. So I started building the show, and we also, during this time we're working a lot. So we're both doing our jobs. Phil also runs a motorcycle shop. He was doing that out of our place in St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
So he's working on his special projects. I'm working on the show. I'm still being a virtual assistant. I'm still doing gig work at this time to save as much money as we can for RV life. We are taking the steps to make RV life happen. It took us a year and a half of working before we hit the road. Also, in creating the show, my hope was that, I could also maybe work with a couple of people in the industry. I really love getting to work with entrepreneurs and small businesses, and was like, okay, I'm going to be going out and meeting these people. Maybe some of them could potentially become clients too.
What kind of skills do you have that would offer them?
See, this is why I said I was going to sponsor the episode, because this is very uncomfortable. Because, again, my main goal of this show was to give back, because this gave me my life. Yeah. There's been so many benefits that I didn't intend on happening from this show. The connections I've made, the friends that I've made, the people I've met. Like, I don't want to come off as like I created this show to get clients, because that's not the goal of this. But
the basis came from the studio closing and giving the information to the people that need it.
Yeah, it's just being totally transparent. It's just difficult, I think as a woman, talking about money and like mixing that stuff in is just really uncomfortable for me personally to do.
This is just what you do. It's not an advertisement.
I know, but that's what it feels like. I hope you leave this in, and you can even leave that part in too, because it's really difficult. And I really value that this show is based off of giving back. And
this show has integrity.
Thank you. But yes, I do have skills that I think are beneficial in this industry. Again, like my loves are graphics and email marketing and tech. Those are the things that I love. I love strategy and research as well. So all of those things I help with. If you want to talk with me more, you can head over to my website, lonelylife.com/work with me, and see all the things that I offer. So since hitting the road, we've been able to connect with so many incredible entrepreneurs and even work with some of them. And I've been able to support the industry that's supported me. And the biggest point that I think that I want to make with this is that I can't depend on my physical body. I will never be able to depend on my physical body. There are still days where I wake up and it hurts too much to get out of bed. There are still days where Phil spends hours with his elbow into my back. There are times where it's just freaking hard. And because I can't depend on my physical body, just like Paul taught me how to look at things from a different angle, I needed to find another way to be a professional in this industry.
Yeah.
So I think the point that I want to make is that you don't have to be a professional dancer to be a professional in this industry. I wanted to infuse as much pole and aerial into my life because it changed my life in the most profound way. And I want to impact the lives of others in that same respect. However, I can't depend on my body in a physical capacity. But what I can depend on is my work ethic, my skills, my resourcefulness, and my creativity.
In your brain.
In my brain. And those are marketable skills that I can earn a living from. So I took those skills and I looked for ways to solve problems in our industry. And if you want it, do the same. Look at this industry with a different perspective and see if there's a problem that you can solve.
There are a lot.
There are a lot of problems in this industry that we need solved. And a huge special thank you to the people who built this industry so that I could earn a living from it. Because I think up until, just recently, this was such a new industry that you really, people couldn't have a virtual assistant in this industry because there wasn't a ton of money to be made. And there's still not like a ton of money to be made. No one in Pole is like rolling it in, and they're doing it because they love it. But, I just really want to give thanks to people who spent the hours, countless hours, years, decades building this industry to make it so people like me could live their life this way.
Yeah.
So that's it. I think I'm done. I hope you enjoyed this. This is at least a little part of my story and a little bit more about me.
Now that you're done sobbing into a washcloth.
Yeah. Now that I'm done with that. And fun fact, if you made it to the end of this, we recorded this 3 times. It finally happened. I lost an episode. Like 40 something episodes that I've recorded, I have not lost any guest interviews, knock on wood. But the first time we recorded this, I was just way too emotional. Like, if you hear me sobbing in this episode, it's nothing compared to the first time we recorded it.
We had a bucket.
We had that bucket.
The bucket.
The bucket. It was just too emotional. And then we recorded it again, and it was better. It was all right.
But we only had one of us.
Yeah, and the file was corrupted, which again, that never happens. We're so I save it in 3 different places on an external hard drive, on a drive, and on a cloud-based system. So that was really strange, but I think it was supposed to happen so that we could come back and do it like this.
Yeah, this is good.
Yeah. So what I hope that you took away from this is that you are capable of so much more than you think.
Yeah, just take another look at it from a different angle.
Yeah. So I think that's all. We are going to go make dinner. I'm going to rest up for some more classes, and we will see you all next time.
From Hohenwald, Tennessee.
Peace out.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Aerial Hour. If you enjoyed this episode or learned something new, I want to hear about it. Your words and feedback fuel this show, so here are 3 simple ways you can support the Aerial Hour. Number 1, hit subscribe so you never miss a new episode. Number 2, share a screenshot on your IG stories of your favorite takeaway from this episode, tagging at the Aerial Hour. I absolutely love seeing these posts. And number 3, write us a review. This is the ultimate way to support the show, and it will only take a couple of minutes. You can leave a review on Apple Podcast or on our Facebook page. I'll be shouting out a new reviewer each week, so make sure to drop yours in there. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. I'll see you next time. I know, it's not a big deal. It just makes me uncomfortable.